welcome to the podcast. It's the best podcast in the world. This is going to end up on the show. I know it, motherfucker. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to episode 98 of Epitome of Stupidity, your favorite allegedly metal podcast. Today you are once again hearing Clutch as our outro music. This is Slow Hold of China, and that's because today we're going to be joined by one John Paul fucking Gaster of Clutch. Hot shit damn, right? Right. So before I get too excited about that, if you're new here, welcome in. I'm Clint. I'll be your host. If you're not new here, I just want to remind you that the more you keep coming back, the better you smell. And you swell smelling folks will know that the show has once again partnered with Sonic Temple here in Columbus, and that all three of the 4-day passes, easy for me to say, have been given away. So congrats to all the dudes and dudettes going to the festival courtesy of the podcast. And at that festival, you'll see today's guest, the mighty fucking Clutch. Let's play one more commercial just in case someone needs some last-second convincing to go to the festival.
Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival returns to historic Cruise Stadium. Slipknot, Disturbed, Pantera, The Original Misfits, Evanescence, Limp Bizkit, Judas Priest, Stain, Breaking Benjamin, A Day to Remember, Falling in Reverse, Sleep Token, Rise Again, 311, Seether, Mudvayne, and many more. May 16th through the 19th, Columbus, Ohio. Tickets on sale now at SonicTempleFestival.com.
So if that commercial and all the bands that are held there within and the 4 days of fun, debauchery, and alcohol, I'm sure, haven't convinced you to go to Sonic Temple and you live here in Columbus, then you don't really have a good reason to miss the benefit concert to raise money for the Mental Health America of Ohio and Franklin County Suicide Prevention Coalition. This show will be going on May 19th at Natalie's here in Grandview and was put together by my guy, one John Estep, and friend of the local music scene. There'll be a link in the show description for more details. So, again, if you're not going to Sonic Temple, go do something for a good cause, right? Right. So, what have I been listening to here recently? Honestly, if you've been here before, you know that I don't need a reason to listen to more Clutch, but that doesn't mean that I won't take a reason to listen to more Clutch. I honestly don't think a full week goes by that I don't listen to some Clutch here or there, and I've certainly used knowing that JP is going to be joining us today as a reason to listen to even more, because why not? Outside of that, I had a fun little spring typo run, as well as some instrumental stuff, keying on bands like Grails and Godspeed You Black Emperor, with a little Toadies mixed in for good measure, because the Toadies fucking rule. And, all of that smattered in with some of the other new releases that have come out here recently, because there's just so much good music out right now. And now, at this point, I'm going to encourage you to drink better alcohol, namely some award-winning mead from Brimminghorn. Go to brimminghornmeadery.com. Pick out some of that previously mentioned award-winning deliciousness, and then at checkout, enter code EPITOMEAD, that's EPITOMEAD, and you'll get a 10% discount. 10% discount on delicious mead just because you heard this. You can't go wrong. Pro tip, if you send me drunken messages after you've bought some and consumed it, I'll get a laugh and we'll all win. So, we've done all the things, right? I think that's it. So at this part, I usually try to give like some cliff notes on the band that we're talking to, but do I really need to do that for Clutch? Okay, fine. Formed in 1991 and have been kicking ass ever since. That's it. That's the cliff notes. I'm going to make dumb phone sounds now, and then we'll have a good conversation. Yeah? Beep, 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 boop. Ring. And he answered. On the call with me today is one John Paul Gaster of the mighty fucking Clutch. John Paul, I feel like the first thing I should ask you is how do I address you? Is it John Paul? Is it JP? Is it Mr. Gaster?
Well, the name that my mother gave me is Jean Paul.
All right.
That's a mouthful for some people, and they will shorten it to Gene, which I do not care for. So at some point along the way, I started calling myself JP. If folks can handle Jean Paul, I like that best of all. JP is fine too.
I'm gonna give
not Gene or Paul.
Noted. I'm gonna give Jean Paul a shot. We'll see how I do.
Awesome.
What are you listening to lately?
Well, last night I was listening to Frank Zappa live recording called "The Muffin Man Goes to College."
All right.
It's got Captain Beefheart on guitar as well. Terry Bozzio on drums. And it's a great recording. So I've been listening to that. I was listening to Thelonious Monk. And then a band called Pigs.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I was listening to those guys a couple months ago too. A little bit of everything, really.
Cool. I want to jump to something there just based on the live record. I love the PA tapes that you guys have been putting out. I personally, I don't understand where some people have such a hardline opinion about live albums, where some people just seem to have a hard no to them. I fucking love them. Where did that idea come from, and is there going to be more of them?
Well, just a little bit of background. We changed the set list from tonight.
Right.
With that, each show was unique. And we've been recording our shows for quite some time now. We have a recorder that we have on the road with us, and so we're able to record multi-track recordings of all the shows for the most part. And it was something that we wanted to do because the sets are different from night to night. It makes for a unique performance, and we choose different songs to put in the set list, so no two are the same. And so for that reason, I think it gives the listener to the ability to check out a live show. When we play, we don't say the same stuff in between the songs.
Sure.
We don't have an intro that always plays the same intro, and then the band comes on, in some sort of very dramatic way. I mean, we play Chuck Brown.
Right.
That's what we've been doing for 20 years.
Need some money.
And then we get out there and we just do the set. And so some people have kind of compared us to the Grateful Dead of heavy metal. I'm okay with that.
Sure. Yeah. I was actually reading an article just this morning comparing you guys to Fish in a similar manner. You talk about the set list there. Walk us through how those are chosen every night.
Well, the first night of a tour is generally Dan's set, and then it'll be myself, and then Neil, and then Tim. And that is actually alphabetical order of first name. And we started doing that sometime in the mid-'90s. Before that, Tim made most of the set list. We would all kind of chip in and, give our ideas. But for the most part, I seem to remember Tim making a lot of set lists. And at some point we decided, well, let's change it up. And that was probably one of the contributing factors to us being able to continue to do this for so many years, to be out here on the road. Because each night is unique. It gives the fans the opportunity to see a completely different show than we would have played last night. We were in Pensacola last night, for example, and it happened to be my night to make the set. So I consulted a website called Setlist FM, which is a cool resource. It pretty much has, all of your favorite bands, all their set lists that they've ever played, they're all in there. It's pretty awesome. So I checked out the set that we played in Pensacola. It would have been probably 2 years ago. And then with the exception of one song, we did a completely different set. And that's also the beauty of having a catalog that's is as deep as ours. Right. We have a lot of tunes to pull from.
Is there anything that's never been played live?
Is there anything that has not been played live?
Right.
I think we've probably played everything at some point live, at least once or twice, or even just in the demoing process. You know, we like to introduce new songs into the set list even before they're recorded.
Right.
So I can't give you an exact scientific fact about that, but I would be willing to bet that most everything has been played at least once.
That seems to stand to reason based on everything else there. Lately, we've all noticed Binge and Purge making it back into the set. How did that come about?
We re-released Transnational Speedway League on our own Weathermaker record label. It's the first time that record's been available on vinyl, and after much negotiation, we were able to secure a licensing deal, and it was super successful. The record sold out immediately, and you know, as a celebration sort of to that record, we decided to put in some of the old tunes that we haven't done in a while, and we took Binge and Purge for a test ride one afternoon at the Jam Room, and it worked out. It sounded good, and so we've been putting that one in the set. That's a fun one. I think probably some fans thought they would never hear that, but we're here to surprise and to entertain.
I'm sure it went over well as well.
Yeah.
So I know that you're there in Tennessee, and I believe you guys played a cave here recently. Just kind of, you know, cave stories included. How's the recent tour going?
The tour has been great, and you are correct. We did play a cave a few nights back. It was a venue outside of Nashville, up in the mountains, and it was beautiful. Really, it just happened to be a really nice day, and the cave itself, of course, is quite damp and dark. It's what you think it would be. It's a cave. But it definitely lends to a sort of certain ambiance for the show, and the drums sounded fantastic in there. I can say that. Yeah, it was a really fun experience. We've been doing some sort of off the beaten path kind of venues on this trip.
Really?
Either venues that we haven't played in quite some time, or new venues entirely. We did a weekend at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which is most famously known for being the site on which The Shining was filmed. Yeah. So that was pretty neat. I'm definitely a fan of that movie, and my wife is as well. So she came out, saw the gig, and so that was fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then we're also playing some sort of, you know, maybe some smaller places that we haven't done in quite some time. And it's mostly just because we want to get out and play, and we want to kind of stay out of the bigger markets. We have another tour coming up later in the year. And fortunately, you know, we can play pretty much any city in the U.S. And there'll be at least a few folks that can come out and see it.
You mentioned that tour coming up later on in the year. That's the one with Rival Sons, right? Where I believe you guys are planning to play, kind of celebrate Blast Tyrant and play it in full.
That is correct. Yeah, we're going to be pressing up a limited edition vinyl that we will only sell on that tour, and we're excited about that. That'll be a cool piece for the fans, kind of a collector's piece, and we will be playing the vast majority of that song of that record. We haven't actually gotten into what exactly we're going to play from the record. We've kicked around a few ideas, but we'll definitely be getting into some songs that we haven't done in quite some time, and at least on some nights we'll be playing the record in its entirety. With
the way you guys change up the set so often, or well, not so often, nightly, does knowing that the majority of the set is going to come from that album, knowing so well in advance that these are the songs, is that a comfort, or is that something that's kind of a task?
It's something that we have not done before, so we'll see how we deal with that on a nightly basis. we haven't committed either way. We just know we're going to be playing a lot of songs from Blast Tyrant, and we'll try different variations on that theme and see where that takes us.
Sure. I'm thinking about it, and where everybody picks the set list a different night, and it's always changing. Does anybody have a tell? Can you, like, if you don't know who started who started the tour picking the set lists, and you're just kind of picking at random here. Is there a way to know that? Oh no, that's definitely a Dan set list. That's definitely a Jean Paul set list.
Well, I can tell you for sure that Tim definitely has a tendency to put in songs that we have not done in some time. He puts a lot of thought into his set list.
Oh yeah,
yeah, definitely. So if it's a Tim set list, there's a good chance there's going to be some stuff on there that we haven't done in a while, and you can also count on Tim making the set as long as possible. Yeah, and you know, by the end of the run, we usually have a pretty good collection of songs. I would bet probably by the end of this run, we will probably have played a total of, I don't know, 65 different tunes. On a longer tour, that list just gets longer and longer. I think maybe the most songs we've played over the course of a tour is probably close to 90 songs.
Wow,
90 different songs.
Different songs,
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the average amount of songs for a set list?
20.
Is it 20?
Yeah, it's 20. Depending on what the venue is, we might do a little less or a little more, depending how much we feel like we're 53 that night. That might
Right.
influence how long the set list is. But for the most part, it's about 20 songs.
Yeah. So you guys have got this tour going currently, and you just played. Was it Welcome to Rockville?
Yep.
And you've got Sonic Temple this weekend, to which I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, and we'll be there in attendance to see you guys that night.
Beautiful.
And then after that, you're off to Brazil and places further away. Does the continuing theme of playing just some different places play in here, or have you touched in Brazil a lot previously?
We have not played in Brazil a lot previously. We've only been there once before, and the other dates on the Latin American run are cities that we've never visited ever before. So that'll be a first for us.
Yeah, and I would expect some kind of, fervor is the word that comes to mind, but, excitement abounds no less, I'm sure.
We're super excited about it, and yeah, that's one of the best things about being in this band, being able to travel places and play gigs in cities that we otherwise would never have the opportunity to visit.
Sure. The comparison between like the festival gigs and the Clutch shows, which do you prefer, and like how do you compare?
You know, I speaking for myself, I don't really have a preference. You know, it's all, at the end of the day, it's a gig.
Sure.
So we're gonna play as hard as we're gonna play regardless. The festivals tend to be outdoors, and that's always a good feeling. You know, sometimes after being in nightclubs night after night, it's refreshing to be able to be outdoors, and whether it's, you know, middle of the afternoon or if you're in Europe, sometimes we're going on at 1 o'clock in the morning. But it's nice to play outdoors, and so that's definitely a different dynamic. And then when it comes time to make the set list, you know, of course we're aware of the kind of festival it is, and maybe the other bands that are on the bill, and so to varying degrees, I think all those things sort of go into what the set list ends up being.
The to go from like a cave one night to the big ass festival the next, and varying up the set list, and just like the wet damp thing to outdoors, and like that's got to be. You've got to love your damn job, right? What's a normal day like for you?
Well, today's a day off, so I went over to the grocery store and bought a few things for the bus, and a little bit later I'll probably go over to the bookstore and see if I can find something to read. On a typical show day, you know, it's have coffee and maybe try to work out a little bit if that's going to happen that day. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I definitely try to find some time to practice, and then later before the gig, some time to warm up. You know, those are two different kind of mentalities. But here on the road, we have a lot of downtime, so I practice is something that I enjoy. It's not a chore for me. I'll probably do that as soon as I finish with you here today.
All right.
And Yeah, I try to do that a little bit every day. For me, it just makes the playing experience that much more enjoyable because you're less thinking when you're on stage, and you're just more just in the mindset of making music because hopefully you've done all that thinking already.
When you're working out the kinks earlier, yeah. I have written here a complete big generic non-question question that kind of relates to this, and that it's just obvious how much you love playing the damn drums. And that like being able to push that out into the crowd and be just to experience is so fucking cool. And the bebopping and scatting that you seem to be doing along with the playing, it's so enjoyable, man. You just seem to love playing the drums.
Well, I do. It's a real thing. It is not an act. I learned early on that there was only a few things that I was really good at, and playing drums is one.
How did you get started?
I started when I was 16.
Yeah.
That's when I got my first kit. Before that, I had cardboard boxes set up in my room, and I would hit those. And I was just listening to music, like most kids my age. There was a lot of there was ZZ Top and AC/DC, and of course Black Sabbath. That was a huge part of my musical development. And then later on, Suicidal Tendencies, Cro-Mags, Fugazi, Bad Brains, and then a lot of jazz stuff too. I had the opportunity to go see Elvin Jones play in Washington D.C. when I was 17, and that definitely rearranged my idea of what drums could be and what it meant to play jazz drums. I had this sort of preconceived notion as to what that was about, and just going to see this music, it's eye-opening and it's educational, and I think as a drummer, it's important to dig and not just pay attention to the drummers that came, the generation before you, but the generation before them and the generation before that. It's like the more you know about the instrument, the easier it is to play. There's a reason why there's a bass drum. There's a reason why there's a hi-hat. This thing we call a ride cymbal. There's a history to that. So all this stuff, it's like the more you learn, the better you understand how the instrument comes together. And for me, it makes it easier to play.
Who would your influences be?
Well, probably one of the most important influences would be Bill Ward from Black Sabbath.
Sure.
For a number of reasons. I think one of the things that most blew me away was listening to Bill Ward at an early age, and then hearing some of this stuff that he did, and thinking to myself, man, that sounded a lot like what I heard Buddy Rich doing on a TV show, on public TV. My father was a proponent of public television. We didn't have a lot of sitcoms in our house. So it was mostly 60 Minutes and Channel 26 and
not a lot of laugh tracks.
That kind of no canned laugh tracks. If there was a canned laugh track, man, my pops would shut that thing right off, boy. But because of that, I got to see a Buddy Rich concert that they would run on public television, and this was before I really even played drums or really even understood what the instrument was. Those memories stuck with me, and then I heard Bill Ward, and I heard him doing similar kinds of things. And for me, as a young drummer, that just totally blew me away, because I'm thinking to myself, how is it that this guy that plays in this brutally heavy band, he sounds jazzy. And at that point, I started to dig a little bit, and then that's when I learned, that a drummer was a drummer. There was no such thing as a jazz drummer or a country drummer or even a rock and roll drummer. A drummer was a drummer, and you grew up listening to the drummers that came before you, and so from that era, you had guys like Gene Krupa and Big Sid Catlett and Louis Bellson, and so those are guys that Bill Ward was hip to. So that for me, that was an eye-opening experience to understand that there's a connection there between this thing that we call heavy metal drums and this thing that we call jazz drums. At the end of the day, it's all just drums. It's all time. It's all music.
What is the just in a kind of high level overview as things have kind of since back then when there was no jazz drums, there was no country drums, there was no, and now it seems like there are the differences. What's the biggest difference between, say, jazz drums and rock drums?
Well, a backbeat. You know, that was the thing. That's the thing that made rock and roll rock and roll. Prior to that, the timekeeping element was much more cymbal based and bass drum based. A snare drum was there to provide accents or maybe an overall pulse, but you didn't really get a backbeat thing until early sort of 50s, either rhythm and blues, early rock and roll. Some blues stuff definitely started to have a backbeat to it. But that once you heard that's when things started to change a little bit. Ringo Starr gets a lot of crap, but I think he was a very important drummer in the way that he made rock and roll sound the way that it did. Because prior to drummers were playing beats that were very similar to what Ringo was playing, but Ringo straightened them out, and he made that eighth note much more, as I say, up and down and less swung. So you can take a beat that looks the same on paper, and you can play it two completely different ways, and ways in between. There's variations of. So for me anyway, that's the thing that made rock and roll was the backbeat.
Yeah, and I've heard that comparison, not comparison so much as analogy with Ringo in different ways previously, and he definitely does get he doesn't get enough credit, that's for damn sure. And to be the butt of a joke in that scenario should not be a thing.
No. And if you look at those live recordings from those guys back then, you watch him play, he wasn't messing around.
No, he's getting after it.
Hard.
Yeah.
Playing hard and beating those hi-hats in a very rock and roll way. Without Ringo Starr, I don't think you would have Keith Moons or Mitch Mitchells. It was a different kind of a thing.
Is there anybody out and about now that you're particularly impressed with or like to catch?
Yeah, I listen to all kinds of drummers, young ones and guys who have been around. I think probably my favorite thing is hearing drummers that have been playing for generations and generations and listening to their sound. I think that's the main thing that maybe some of the drummers from the younger generation, especially in music that we're doing now, and this thing that we call rock and roll or heavy metal, the sound of the drums for me is a very important thing, and I think that's something that's sort of become neglected recently with the advent of triggers and as much processing as we hear these days. Having a bass drum without a bunch of pillows in it and no trigger, I think these days people look at that thing like it's a dinosaur. Like, what would you want? Why would you possibly want to do that? But for me, that's the thing that first attracted me to the drums. Really was the sound of this instrument, and the idea that depending on who played those drums, they would sound differently. Same drum set played by one guy as compared to another, it's going to sound like a completely different instrument, and that only comes with spending time on the instrument, practicing, like we were talking about, listening to a lot of music.
It kind of lends itself to something you just said there, where you can take the same beat, the same piece of music, and two different people play it, and it comes off completely differently, right?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. That's my favorite thing.
Is there ever a time where you're playing your own thing and it feels different, sounds different?
Sure. Yeah, that happens from night to night. Sometimes I have to figure out what is different tonight. What's happening? Why is that different? It could be the room. It could be the drum making a weird thing. It could be my head just in a place that it's not supposed to be. Thinking about stuff that I shouldn't be thinking about, or there's a lot of internal conversation that goes on over the course of that hour and a half that we're on stage.
Is there a particular album that you're, say, most proud of from a drumming perspective?
Well, I think each one of the records kind of represents a different time in how we were developing at the time. I think some of their performances are better than others, but all of them are parts that I created, and I enjoy going back and listening to it now. There was a time where it might be difficult to listen to some old recordings, just because you think to yourself, man, I could have done that better, or the tempo's not the way it should be, or the choice of drum sound, but now that we have such a large, catalog, they're just little snapshots of where we were at the time. I will say, I think probably the self-titled record, the one that we released in 1995, just Clutch. I think that probably set a trajectory for the band that we still, in some ways, follow to this day. Prior to that, we'd had one full length and a 7-inch and an EP, and we were still trying to sort of find our sound and try to figure out what this thing was that we were doing. And I feel like with the self-titled record, I think we kind of cracked the code a little bit, and we figured, oh wait, there's something we can work off of here, and from there, the thing just grew.
Sure. Are there bits and pieces from that or any of the others that you feel like get revisited every time you sit down to record or write? Is this because of that being the kind of setting the trajectory? Is that almost like the baseline then?
I guess in some ways it is. I don't think we consciously reference that record, but I think probably a lot of people associate that record with our sound, and more importantly, I think for us, we knew that once we had made that record, we had something unique on our hands that was it was our sound.
Sure. Is there, with so many albums and so many kind of different flavors throughout them all, is there ever a song or a particular reaction to an album that particularly surprised you?
Maybe when Blast Tyrant came out.
Yeah?
Yeah, I remember Blast Tyrant was a record that it took quite some time to make. We had demoed it several times, and we finally started kind of re-recording the record with Machine. And when we did that, we took those songs and kind of deconstructed them. We worked very closely with him. He was a very hands-on kind of a producer. And that record took a long time to make. And by the time that record was finished, that was one that was difficult to listen to because we had been working on it for so long.
Yeah.
And we used a lot of modern sort of recording technology back then. We had used click tracks on some material prior to that, but Blast Tyrant was the first record that was entirely cut with click tracks.
Really?
So as a drummer, for me, that was a challenge. And the way that we recorded it too, a lot of us, we recorded our parts sort of individually. So because of that, I was kind of, I'm not sure if hesitant was the right word to use, but I was unsure of what the reaction was going to be, and by that point, certainly I was tired of hearing, Stuttle Hustle. But the record came out, and it was immediately very well received, and we learned a lot making that record. I think that record we understood better how to craft a song, and a lot of that has to do with Machine.
Yeah, and you guys have worked with him. You guys had worked with him previously and a couple times since, if I remember right.
That's correct. Yeah, Machine worked on Earth Rocker and Psychic Warfare as well.
I love that you go to Blast Tyrant with that because, I specifically remember when I first heard that album. We went to I worked a third shift job, and we looked to see when the local media play was going to open or whatever, Best Buy, whatever it happened to be at that time, and delayed taking our lunch until that damn thing was open so that we could run over there, grab the CD, listen to it on the way back. And my buddy and I just looking at each other going, oh man, this is awesome. Holy shit. And now,
incredible.
Realizing that that's 20 years ago now. It's in the moment realizing that. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So what's something that you wish you would have known about all this, if you go all the way back to 91 going forward?
Wish I would have known. I wouldn't want to know any of this stuff.
Yeah?
Because I think if I had known that we were going to be around for 32 years, I don't think I would have treated it with the same respect and time that it deserves. Every release that we did was just that. It was a release, and we were going to go on tour. And what happens after that, who knows? So the unknown is kind of exciting.
The learn as you go type thing, huh?
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that.
You're all right. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. I've actually had a cough myself here recently that I can't seem to shake.
I think it's allergies. I was walking around out there earlier today, and the allergies are bad.
Well, you know what? I'm going to use that as a reason to jump back to something that I kind of skipped over earlier. You say you're going to the bookstore later. What are you reading recently?
I like Cormac McCarthy quite a bit.
Yeah?
Yeah. I find myself reading more while I'm on the road than I do at home, just because there's more downtime.
Yeah.
And I don't have my wife to talk to. So I read.
It was nuts that Cormac put out those last two books, and then it seemed like it was almost seemed like, I want to say planned, but that sounds really crude. But he died so recently after those last two books came out. That was crazy.
Yeah. I have not read the last. I think there was one that he just wrote called The Passenger.
Yeah, it was The Passenger and the kind of companion book to it that I can't remember the name of.
Oh wow, okay. I don't know this. Maybe I'll look for that when I go over there today.
Some of his books are like, his writing style is obviously all his own, and I'm not going to tell you about Cormac McCarthy. You've read the books, but I read a lot, but that doesn't mean that I read fast or anything like that. But reading No Country for Old Men is one of the only times that I put down that book like 3 times in 2 days and just could not get enough of it. It was so great.
Yeah.
He certainly knew what the hell he was doing.
No doubt about it.
How about a common myth that you would debunk about being in a band or Clutch, period?
Common myth. I don't know, that we drink whiskey all the time and we're going woo backstage a lot.
Not a thing.
No, it's pretty quiet back there actually. I think people assume, and that's not just Clutch. I think they assume a rock band is going to sort of be loud all of the time, and that's definitely not the case with Clutch.
What are some good tour stories from over the years?
A good tour story is one that we made it back home. I don't know. It's hard to. Every day here on tour is wild. So it's hard to just like on command just be like, oh well, this crazy thing happened, because every day is, there's something new. I can tell you we woke up in the middle of the desert in outside of Albuquerque a couple mornings ago, and man, there was just nothing out there, and the bus was very broken down. But thankfully, our driver is not only an excellent driver, but an amazing mechanic as well, and so he was able to fix it. But like I was saying, stuff like this just happens all the time. Somebody I saw an interview one time with Dave Brocky of Guar.
Okay, yeah,
one of my favorite people, and I miss him so much. He was really good to us. But I saw an interview one time, and somebody asked him, "What's the craziest thing that ever happened on tour?" And he said, "The craziest thing that's ever happened on tour is that we showed up at the gig on time. The gear was where it needed to be. The promoter had all the money. The show was sold out, and we made it out of there and still made some merch money, and the buses didn't break down." Like that's a crazy thing. If you can get that to happen, that's wild.
That's the one that's really out of the ordinary.
That's the one that's out of the ordinary. Every day there's, it's what it is. You're playing live music in front of people who are there. They want to have a good time. They want to party, and our job is to provide the music, the soundtrack to their evening.
Sure.
So you see all kinds of stuff all the time,
The one thing that, while every day is different in this scenario, the one thing that for sure stays the same is the same 4 guys are doing it. Are you guys to a point where, like, you can blink out a sequence without having to say things?
Pretty much, yeah. We when we're in the writing mode, quite often there will be, very little actually spoken words, more just sort of grunts and points and, do it again, and counting off,
Right.
again. So we, in some way, I think we kind of share a brain, which is fun. But also at the same time, these guys still surprise me. After all these years, we'll be in the jam room and I'll hear something that comes from Tim's side of the room that I think to myself, wow, I've never heard something like that before. And that happens with all the guys, and so that's a precious moment.
I believe it. Is there, like with the Bakerton group, is that going to be a thing again? Is there a closer relationship between you, Tim, and Dan just because of the instruments and the Bakerton group thing?
Yeah, there could very well be a Bakerton group thing on the horizon. I can tell you for sure, though. I mean, we are just so busy with Clutch these days that it's, to think about a Bakerton group project it's a lot.
I believe
but it could happen. Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways those Bakerton group records that we made definitely shaped the sound of Clutch as well, because it was a way for us to experiment. And so the two projects kind of, I think they influence one another.
Is there, like, do you have to consciously or think to do more without the vocals? Is there?
That was kind of the challenge. That was the idea when we made the Bakerton group. How do we make some instrumental songs to give us a little bit of room to improvise, but more than anything keep the audience engaged. And so there's some very cool riffs on those records, and I'm definitely very proud of them. It was a different way of thinking.
Yeah, I certainly enjoy them myself. I remember seeing you guys a couple times where the Bakerton group would open, and that it took me a while to get my head around that. It might have been because I was probably a little drunk for a couple of those shows, but either way, it seemed like a fun way to get things going. You talk about writing stuff and so much going on with Clutch. I think I've seen where somebody said that there's definitely nothing before 2025. Have you guys actually started in earnest on some new stuff?
We have. Yep, we've been writing. We've got some demos together. We'll hit it again when we finish up this tour. Write some more. I suspect we'll probably record after that run with Rival Sons in the fall, sometime next winter or early next year.
So then, the idea of an album in 2025 isn't terribly far-fetched.
No, it's very much that's the plan at this point.
That's not what I expected. That's awesome. I
Cool.
personally would always love more Clutch. How do you, like, you've talked a little bit about the different ways to record. I think this is a stupid question with an obvious answer, but whatever, I'm here anyways. How do you prefer to record?
I don't really have a preference. If when you ask, how do you prefer to record? To me, I think, okay, are we recording with click tracks straight to a digital format, which is the most common way and probably the way that we've made most of our sort of more modern recordings. The flip side of that is recording without click tracks and maybe even using analog gear, which forces you to make decisions more quickly and commit to whatever performance that you're working on at the time. So it's a different mentality. Sometimes I think with all of the available options that we have when we record the more modern way with click tracks and using Pro Tools, there can be a tendency, I think, to sort of have two and also not commit to a final thing. If you're cutting guitar solos, for example, it's very easy to cut 25 different guitar solos and they could all be awesome. But at some point you got to choose one guitar solo. And so when you record straight to tape, you don't have all those opportunities to keep all of those different solos. So it's just a different way of thinking. Good music can be recorded either way. I think it's just important that you not let the technology rule what the end result is.
Okay. So kind of thinking through and to jump from the different ways to record to all the things that have been recorded, over the years you guys have never succumbed to trends or got caught up in whatever was cool in the moment. You've always been very clutch, and that's what I'm pretty comfortable in saying everybody loves about you guys. Is there a point in the life of Clutch that you can all kind of collectively laugh at and think, man, what were we thinking?
Yeah, last night's show. Yeah, I mean, we don't really take ourselves too seriously. It's still at the end of the day, we just love to get up there and play. And then, after the gig, it's very common for us to sit in the back and have a beer and talk about all the stupid mistakes that we made over the course of the evening. And yeah.
That's oddly reassuring that, like, I know that some of the PA tape have some hiccups in them, but to know that guys who are as practiced and accomplished as you are don't get it 100% right every night.
We definitely don't. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we do change up the set list. But my favorite musicians and my favorite recordings are not the ones that are perfect, but the ones that hit me. If that goes for any kind of music or any genre, it's not about making a perfect recording. It's about capturing a song, capturing a performance, and so we tend not to focus too much on small details of things, and much more just focus on what's happening there that night and the overall vibe of the crowd. And if you miss a hit, or I fuck up a drum fill, I mean, who cares? It's already gone. By the time you set it, you're already 2 or 3 bars ahead of what just happened. So it's important, I think, to not get too bogged down in the detail of the moment. Just keep think big picture.
Sure. Is there a particular song that you could call your favorite to play live?
No, not really. I mean, I try to give a fresh and inspired performance for every tune that we do. El Jefe was on the set last night. That's a record. That's a song from Transnational Speedway League. That's a 30-year-old song. And I try to find different ways to play it every night, even if it's just something subtle enough for me that most people won't even really hear it. If I feel like if I'm engaged, if the band is engaged, then the audience is they're gonna pick up on that, and they'll see that it's not just dudes up there just running the same set again.
Going through the motions, yeah. And I would assume that to some degree, at this point it probably doesn't make much of a difference, but the way that your actual kit has changed from Transnational till now probably lends itself to some of those changes being a little easier.
Sure. Yeah. I don't change my setup a lot, and I haven't really changed it a lot over the years. But there are some subtle things different. I mean, just changing out a snare drum can make you think differently. Changing out a pair of hi-hats, kind of adds or changes the overall feel of how you're playing. So it doesn't take much.
Was there ever, can you recall a moment where you had to deal with some performance anxiety?
Only in my dreams. I do have dreams from time to time where it's like the worst gig ever. There's one that was reoccurring there for a minute where we would do it would be a fly-in gig, right? Like we had to fly to some festival or something, and I get to the gig and there's no hardware. And so I end up taking my drums and putting them on this sort of folding table, and I'm playing standing up, and the cymbals are falling off the table. And
if he hears this, he'll kill me for saying this, but a buddy of mine plays in a band called Gudger here locally, and they were playing a bigger for a local band show, and something wasn't tightened, and they're in the middle of a song, and his whole damn drum set just fell apart. Like he's hitting something, and then there's nothing there to hit anymore. And I was standing there watching him, his face just go slack. Like, oh my God, what the hell just happened?
Well, that is a nightmare, and as I said, that only happens in my dreams, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend who had to deal with that in real life.
Jean Paul, this has been a lot of fun talking to you. I'm going to end this with my normal stupid, goofy things that I ask smarter people. But before I turn the stupid screws, I'm going to say an earnest thank you for joining me for a while here. It's nice to have this show smartened up every now and then.
I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
So the rapid fire questions here, we'll do a quick run through. I feel like this is an easy one that I always get wrong when I guess at what somebody's answer will be. So coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's something you could eat for a week straight?
Ham sandwich.
That's a new one. Beatles or Stones?
Today's Stones.
Yeah.
It might be Beatles tomorrow.
See, I've kind of grown into that mentality where I used to be Stones. No, they're the Beatles for a reason.
Yeah.
Beer or liquor?
Beer.
Let's see here. Scale of 1 to 10, just us talking here. How good are you at keeping secrets?
I'm good at keeping secrets. I don't talk much, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've got a tattoo right here that says loose lips sink ships.
That's
You can tell me anything. I won't tell anybody.
that's good enough for me.
I don't like gossip either.
No fun in that.
Nope.
Go-to karaoke song.
I don't have one.
That's also my answer. Last one here. Sausage links or patties?
Links.
Okay. Now, I end this on the very original, nobody's ever thought of this before question. You, Jean-Paul Gaster of the Mighty Clutch, are sent to an island by yourself for the rest of your life. You get to take one album with you. What's that album?
John Coltrane, A Love Supreme.
I'm going to write that down. Yeah, man. I won't eat up any more of your time. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing you Sunday here in Columbus. That'll be my, 332nd Clutch show or something stupid like that. And I'm just as excited now as I was back in 1990, whatever.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That makes me just as excited. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. See ya.
All right. Take care. We'll see you.
So, okay. A huge, massive thanks to JP of, again, fucking Clutch for joining me today. In case you need a reminder, Clutch are fucking awesome, and you should catch them live as often as possible and listen to their music as often as possible. Continual thanks to the sponsor, Sonic Temple, where, as we were just talking about, I'll be seeing Clutch this Sunday. I believe that's May 19, and the Brimminghorn Dudes. Make sure to follow the podcast and Clutch on all the socials. Hit the old subscribe button there for wherever it is that you're listening to this damn podcast from. Give us a review on iTunes or give stars on Spotify, please and thanks. And now we'll kick it over to some more Clutch to end this thing properly and hear Slow Hole to China in full.
too shallow, then dig it more deep. If too narrow, then dig it more wide. If you see the point of light, shake hands with the other side. A lighthouse in Kentucky.